Let's get into this conversation now. Justice Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi says the Sexual Offenders Gender-Based Violence Register will be released by the end of the month. Various groups have been pushing for this for a number of years now. Kubayi joining us today for more on this and in particular the process that is about to unfold. Minister, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Let's start with the exact date within which this particular register will be made public.
Good evening, Xoli, and to the viewers at home. It's a process that I need to explain. You're not going to wake up end of the month and have access to the register as an ordinary citizen. I think let me start there. We've been explaining that because there's a clause of confidentiality, we have to do a phased-in approach of release. And somebody has said, how do you release it? We're releasing it first to the institution that deals with children. These are education, school, basic education institutions. Also to SACE, to have unfettered access to the register. And also those who are dealing with early childhood development. That would be the first phase by this month that I've given an instruction for the team to ensure that it's done. What is different from previously to now is that previously is that anyone from the Department of Basic Education would have had to apply for that certificate to get, for example, if you want to check Mmamoloko on the register, you get to apply and then you're given a certificate that Mmamoloko is not there. We don't want that to happen. We want them to have access to the register, and that is what I've announced. Yeah. And then second phase would be us amending the legislation so that we can be able to remove the confidentiality clause so that all employers that are needing access to that can have direct access to the register. We do think that in the process, as we have conversations with the NGOs, including this Friday, we will deal with the issue around what we are confronted with COPIA Act in terms of general access to the register by everybody, even though they have nothing to do with children and all that. We do note that parents are saying to us, we will want to have access to this register ourselves as parents so that I know if I send my child to this particular school and this is the person that is looking after these children or is teaching my child, I do not leave my child in the hands of a sexual perpetrator.
Yeah. I appreciate that information, Minister, because I think it goes some distance to clarifying these two phases that are going to unfold. But I'll tell you now that a parent sitting and listening to this who may have had their child violated, they will say, I really do not care about this person's rights because they are criminals in the first place. And so why should we care much about their rights? And that's what annoys people. But the problem here, Minister, is that we are a constitutional state. That means that we abide by the law that is the Constitution. Constitutional rights of criminals/offenders. Has this been tested against that?
Look, the issue here, as you say, Xoli, is not a very easy one. I mean, as a parent leaving a child, you'd want to know all those issues. And indeed, one of the issues is that we've got to protect children over perpetrators and sexual offenders. So that's important as well, because the Children's Act does call for us to make sure that we are able to Child Justice Act as well in terms of those who have violated. So we've got to look at all these things. But the reality is that you can't just violate the Act. That's why the process required is that we must amend that confidentiality so that everybody knows that we are going to release it. Yes, if you have committed a crime, you have limited rights. That is understood in the society where we live. But again, we've got to balance it with what we have said as a country, that there is issues of correctional services. You correct a person, rehabilitate. But it's those things that it's not an easy one to be able to say you can just run and steamroll on in terms of emotions and what you want. And as I say, I'm an activist. I was part of the march that said to the department, now I'm in the side and I'm saying, how do I responsibly make sure that I do what is necessary, but do not drag everybody backwards with where we can end up with a court judgment that even this, what we are doing, gets reversed.
Yeah.
Because it takes one person to say, we've got rights as offenders or previous offenders, therefore this will continue to discriminate me. So we've got to make sure that we protect the process and we do not regress what we have already achieved and what we can achieve.
Sex offenders who are underage, you've already touched on this a little bit at the beginning. Will they be included in this register, or are their names not going to be included in this?
Currently, the minors won't be included fully. Those who have been involved, you'd understand that there's a process in terms of Child Justice Act that they've got to be taken through. They are taken through social workers and they are tried to be rehabilitated and all that. So their process is different, because one of the issues which is difficult, and as I said, even today at the portfolio committee, I was saying, it's a society issue. How to deal with the 14-year-old that has raped? This is a minor in terms of our constitutions and our laws, that this person does not even have the ability to make decisions for themselves. But they find in themselves that they've raped. Do we throw this child out? That's why the rehabilitation for them, it's a different case compared to an adult. I would advocate and I would say, as we engage with everybody else, and as we are doing from a departmental point of view and myself, is to say the cases of the kids who have been found as sexual offenders, having to understand where they come from, because others, when you look at their histories, that they've been violated themselves.
Yeah.
And therefore, you've got to deal with it differently compared to adults who are finding themselves in trouble with the law.
Let's try and deal now with the after effects of publishing that sexual offenders list, Minister. Do you anticipate legal challenges after publishing this register? If so, how ready are you to defend?
With the first phase, I don't anticipate challenges in terms of legal court processes. But with the public release, we do expect, that's why we would want to do a process that opens up in terms of amendment of the legislation, which will have public participation. And therefore, out of those, then we'll deal with the issue. The issue here is that we will have to argue what supersedes what act would supersede the other. Is protection of criminals or a sexual offender above protection of children who can be destroyed for life? And again, you will have to separate again. There are those that have actually been sexual offenders and they're repeated in terms of the acts that they're doing. You know, one of the issues I made as an example, which is most of the TikTok, and that's why I'm advocating for its release. Because I went to a magistrate court, I interacted with a magistrate who told me that 10 children in one early childhood center were raped by one person. Surely this is not an individual that deserves our protection as society. And we hope as we engage with society, we engage with those that are anticipating or are preparing to take us to court. They must understand that we have this type of people in our society that we must protect children from. Yeah. The other incident, you had somebody who raped young girls in a village, moved out of those villages, went to another. They got arrested, released, came back and raped again. Now, you can't have such a person in a society. So there is a case that we've got and incidences and examples that we can show why we are motivating for this sexual offences register to be made public.
Let me ask you, Minister, a different question now. I'm moving from this particular subject, and I want to bring you to your attention the matter of the former mayor of Johannesburg, Kabelo Kwamanda. His case has now been provisionally withdrawn, and that of his co-accused. The NPA says we are anticipating more complaints. In fact, more complaints have come. We're now wanting to investigate more of that. And one word they used is that these charges will be reinstated. But my question is premised on this, that How do you, as the justice system in South Africa, balance the reputational damage to the person versus them needing and should be held accountable if indeed they've done something wrong? Does that question make sense?
No, it does, Xoli, and I think this matter has been raised by a number of people with me, and I've had conversation with the National Director of Public Prosecution, where people are saying we are seeing quite a number of cases being withdrawn out of courts. Others are saying that we seem not to have a credibility crisis at NPA. And I think what has been important, especially with the Kwamanda case and others, is that NPA has gone out to explain immediately, in full, its decision. And where it becomes a difficulty is when you just hear that a matter has been withdrawn, there's no explanation to the public, there's no clarification why in the first place NPA decided to say that we've got a case, we will prosecute, and then down the line they withdraw and say that we are no longer prosecuting. So, and in that process, yes, when you decide that you are going to prosecute, you charge somebody, there is a case for them to answer, and then their names are in front pages, they are everywhere, and then you withdraw, you can't repay that damage. It's a damage that it can be, but equally, as a society, we've got to understand that this is the legal system that we have. We have a legal system that allows National Prosecuting Authority to be able to say you have a case before to answer, but also it allows for people to do a representation. What we just need to do, and which I've been advocating for as a minister without interfering with the prosecutorial decisions, is for transparency in the decision making so that we all don't lose confidence in the NPA.
Yeah. And Minister, I think as we were testing before we went on air, you made a promise that you are going to join us in studio. So in closing, very quickly, I'm out of time, where are we in relation to the Justice Ministry and the state capture record and that needing to be handed over to the NPA?
Upon arrival on the portfolio, I saw articles about this. I did engage the NPA head and together with the Director General. I can tell you now the IDEC head together with the head that is responsible for the center, they have been working together, and so far I've not received a complaint. I did check with the advocate Batoi if there's a problem, if he needs to flag, and so far I was told there's no problem. So where I'm sitting, there is no problem. NPA has access to the records they need to be able to deal with the state capture these matters.
Mmamoloko Kubayi, the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. I end this conversation in anticipation for a longer one next time. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time.